What up, reader fam? Today I'm bringing you another video in my Books I've Read Recently series. The series here on my channel where I share with you some books that I've read recently and my thoughts on them. I've got quite a few mixed reviews for you today. I've got some positives, I've got some negatives, so without further ado, let's get started. The first book I read recently is this book called Noggin by Cory Whaley. This story follows this guy named Travis who died of cancer, but they freeze his head in hopes that one day they might reach a medical stage in which they can bring him back to life. It sounds crazy, I know. So fast forward 5 years and they've done just that. They've reached new medical heights to where they can put Travis's head on the body of someone else who has also passed away and they can bring him back to life. I had an interesting experience with this book in the fact that I was enjoying it, but I also had a lot of issues along the way. There were things about it that I really liked and there were things about it that I really didn't like. It was really cool seeing this character be brought back from the dead basically, and just seeing how that affected his life and how it affected the way that he interacted with the world around him. But at the same time, I found it incredibly difficult to sink myself into his character and to truly allow myself to see where he's coming from, because he can be such a frustrating character at times, but I know it's just because I wasn't able to fully put myself in his shoes. Because you see, when he comes back to life, he kind of just expects to pick everything back up the way that it used to be. But things have changed, and when he died, the people in his life never truly expected him to come back to life. And a part of their healing process was accepting his fate and allowing themselves to move forward in life. So when he comes back, he just expects everything to be the same. He wants to pick up the pieces right where they left off. But it's not that easy when everyone else is on a different page than you. So because of this, Travis, our main character, comes off as really possessive sometimes, especially when it comes to his girlfriend that he had when he died. She has very much so settled herself into this new life, and that's something that Travis just cannot accept. He desperately wants things back to the way that they used to be, and because of that, he begins to cross boundaries that she set up. That aspect of the story is what truly made me uncomfortable while reading this story, but at the same time, that uncomfortableness came with me not being able to fully see where he's coming from. It was hard for me to question what I would have done if I were in his same shoes. How would I react if I was in the same situation as Travis? Would I be doing the same thing and trying to get my life back to the way it was? Mind you, if I was that way, I really hope that I would handle things differently than Travis did, because Travis was just very possessive, and sometimes it came off as a little bit entitled too, but it's really hard to know. I think that I would just have to be put in this situation to fully know. The things that I loved in this book are things that I can't necessarily discuss without spoiling, so I'm not going to go into detail, but I will say that there were things that surprised me throughout this book. And those things are what kind of saved this book and bumped it up a star rating. Also, this book takes place in Kansas City, Missouri, and it was nice to just read a book that was set in my home state. I really appreciated that aspect. All in all, I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars, but I will say the first chunk of the book, I was leaning more towards a 2-star rating, but I really liked things that happened in the second part of the book, so I had to bump it up a rating. The next book that I read recently is Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertelli. This story follows our main character Simon, who is gay but is closeted. He's been secretly emailing someone he's interested in, even though he doesn't know the person's true identity. When he accidentally leaves his email open in the school library, someone finds it and then uses Simon's secret against him. So this person is basically blackmailing Simon. I read this book 2 weeks before the movie came out, and I tried to just forget about the hype, because if you don't know, this is a very popular book, and I tried my best just to forget about the hype. But after reading this book, I feel like this book really deserves the hype. I found myself really enjoying this story, and I know that I'm gonna have a hard time critiquing this book because I honestly don't have any critiques necessarily for this book. The best way that I can put this book is that it's just a fun book. It's a fun contemporary story. I loved our main character Simon. He has the sense of humor that I love, and I like how in this book we kind of have a bigger cast of characters, and you feel like you get to know each of them pretty well. And because of the larger cast of characters, it brings in so many interesting and unique dynamics within the characters. I'm trying to think of some kind of critique that I have for this book, but I honestly can't think of anything. Anyways, overall, I gave Simon a 4 out of 5 stars, maybe even a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I just can't give it the full 5 stars because it didn't reach best book ever, but I still really loved this book and I can definitely recommend it. The next book that I read recently is Thornhill by Pam Smye. This was similar in format to a Brian Selznick book where we have one story that's being told through text and another story that's being told through images. So in this book, we follow 2 different perspectives. The first perspective is a girl who has moved to this town and she becomes fascinated by this ghostly figure that she one day sees outside of her window. The other story follows a girl who is an orphan living in an orphanage who has to deal with living with her bully. And eventually eventually these two stories end up colliding. I was unfortunately incredibly let down by this book, and I think it's because I went into this book with the expectation that it was going to be super scary, but it wasn't even a little bit on the spooky side. I was wanting it to give me chills, but it did not give me chills. Now, if I were to rate this book on the illustrations alone, I would give it a 5 out of 5 stars. Like, I loved the images throughout this story, but the story itself was really underwhelming. The writing style itself was lacking a bit of punch, and the plot was overall really predictable. I was really hoping that the author would take the story in a really surprising direction, but it seems like they opted out and stayed in the predictable lane, which is unfortunate because this had the potential to be a great story. I ended up giving this book a 2 out of 5 stars. Then I read another Cory Whaley book, and that is Highly Illogical Behavior. This story follows two different perspectives. First, we follow the perspective of Solomon Reed, who is agoraphobic and he hasn't left his house for 3 years. And then we follow Lisa Prater, who is a character I really didn't like. She is determined to get into one of the best psychology programs in the country, so she comes up with this not so great idea to help get her foot in the door. She decides that if she can fix Solomon, then she'll have a better chance of getting into the program. This was kind of a book that I found myself having a hard time reading at times, and it's because I found Lisa's perspective to be unbearable at times. It was just frustrating because she's on this mission to fix Solomon and has this ulterior motive when it comes to wanting to be friends with Solomon. And Solomon is just this innocent kid and he's not seeing what Lisa's up to. It was just difficult for me to read her perspective because she was taking advantage of him for her own personal gain. Overall, though, the characters in this book kind of fell flat for me. Sure, they did each have different characteristics going for them, but I think it's because those things weren't explored that much. It's like they were just mentioned. They had an interest here, they had an interest there, and I feel like those other things kind of got lost in maintaining this image that was set up at the beginning of the book. And I just wanted the different sides of the characters to be explored a little bit more. I don't know if I'm making any sense right now, but hopefully I am. I just wanted to see more of the characters. I wanted to see more of their interests. I wanted to see more of the things that they were dealing with. But I say all this by saying that the characters were the strongest part of this story, which is unfortunate because they didn't even feel fully developed to me. The story itself was rather underwhelming in my opinion. There's one storyline where you can kind of guess where it's going to end up, but the climax of the story I really had issues with, and that's because it was just super random. It was over the top and it just felt super unnecessary. I obviously can't say much because I don't want to spoil anything, but I wonder if it had not been in the book if I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. Like I said, there's one thing that you can kind of predict is going to happen at the beginning of the story, and I really think if the story focused in on that one storyline, it would have been fine. I didn't need some big thing to explode in order to enjoy this book. Overall, I ended up giving this book a 2 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read this book called If You Come Softly by Jacqueline Woodson. This is a love story about two people, Ellie and Jeremiah, and they both come from really different worlds. Ellie is Jewish and Jeremiah is black, and they meet at school one day, and they quickly begin to develop feelings for one another. It's a story of a biracial relationship during a time where it wasn't fully accepted yet. So I didn't originally plan on reading this book. This book was sent to me unsolicited by Penguin, but when I saw this book was written by Jacqueline Woodson, I had to give this book a chance because I loved her book Brown Girl Dreaming so much. So when I saw her name on this book, I was like, I just gotta give this a chance. Going into this book, I really lowered my expectations because of the fact that I knew it was going to be heavily focused on romance. If you're new to this channel, I'm not a big fan of books focused on romance. If I'm gonna read a romance book, I'm gonna need a lot of other things to be happening on top of it. Now, there is definitely a focus on a relationship in this book, and it is kind of a quick love situation here, which is kind of a pet peeve of mine, but for some reason with this book, it worked, and it didn't bother me that much. I was pleasantly surprised. Who am I? What's happening here? I think it's because infatuation was more so shown than like love. What I truly loved about this book though was even though it did have a romance at the forefront of it, this book is also so much more than that. The thing that we explore the most in this book is race and interracial couples. These two characters endure backlash. They have people staring at them when they're out and about, people whispering about them. They're just minding their own business, enjoying each other's company. And it's not only from strangers that they get backlash, they also get backlash from family members. My one complaint with this book is that it kind of has this really abrupt ending. Abrupt and emotional ending, mind you. I feel like it would have been nice if this book was longer and we could have explored the topics that she brought up throughout this book even more. This is not a contemporary that has all these big and crazy things happening. It's a quiet and gentle contemporary, but it's one that will leave a mark on you. So that being said, sometimes you come in contact with a book that you think you're not going to like. And well, bam, you end up really liking it. Overall, I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. The last book that I read recently is actually a graphic novel, and that is the Mortal Instruments graphic novel by Cassandra Clare with art by Cassandra Jean. I don't have too much to say about this one, but I wanted to mention it because I had some things to say. I believe this encompasses like half of City of Bones. It's been a long time since I've read City of Bones, so I could be wrong there. And I was kind of hesitant in reading this because I'm not the biggest fan of the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare. It's probably my least favorite that she's put out. I'm more of a The Infernal Devices kind of guy. But for some reason, I enjoyed this story so much more in this format. It just worked so well. It was less cringy, there was less info dumps, and the humor was for some reason even more spot on in this format. I was so surprised that I enjoyed this as much as I did, but it seems to kind of fix a lot of the problems that I have with City of Bones. I also just really love Cassandra Jean's art style, even though sometimes I do feel like she gets a little bit lazy with like her backdrops and stuff, but maybe that's just not her strong suit, so she just avoids that. I don't know, no shade, I can't draw worth crap, so I respect what she can draw. I just think there are some things that she can work on. But overall, I would give this a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. So those are all the books that I've read recently. I do have some individual reviews coming up here pretty soon. I'm just so behind on filming and posting reviews, so I apologize, but I just want to make them the best that I can. So I've got reviews coming up for They Both Die at the End, Stars Above, and Every Heart a Doorway. So look out for these 3 reviews coming to a sub feed near you. You guys should let me know down below in the comments if you have read any of the books that I mentioned in today's video and what you thought of them. I had some pretty negative reviews, so if you have a positive review for a book that I gave a negative review, I would love to hear your thoughts on those books. And if you haven't read any of the books that I mentioned in today's video, then let me know down below some books that you've read recently that you either loved or you didn't like. Let me know all your thoughts down below in the comments. If you like this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. I post videos frequently on this channel, so if you want to see more bookish content from me, be sure to go and hit subscribe or go and click the little bell icon and you'll be notified every time I post new videos. As always, thanks for watching guys, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye, chew.